Do you ever notice? In today's world, people are always racing to prove something. They fight to prove they're right, to prove they're worthy, to prove they matter. And in that race, they talk more, explain more. Sometimes they even beg, begging for attention, begging for validation, begging for a glance, a response, anything to feel seen. But let me ask you this. Have you ever felt exhausted from always explaining yourself? Ever typed out that long message, poured your heart into every word, only to be met with silence? Here's the truth. Stoics don't do that. Stoics don't chase attention. Stoics don't beg for recognition. Stoics don't explain themselves just to please someone else, because they know one simple truth. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is strength. When you over-explain, you give away your power. When you fight to prove your worth, you hand over control of your life. But when you stay silent, when you stand tall in dignity and discipline, you send a message louder than words: I know who I am. I don't need your confirmation. Silence is discipline of the mind. Silence is self-respect. Silence is how you keep your dignity even when the world tries to drag you down. Think of Marcus Aurelius, the emperor philosopher. He ruled an empire, yet he never needed to prove himself. Or Epictetus, a slave who became a sage. He didn't need anyone's approval to know his worth. Both understood real power doesn't come from being heard. It comes from knowing when not to speak. And today, I want to invite you on a journey into 10 truths of silence, a superpower the Stoics mastered. We'll uncover how silence makes people feel your absence, how silence helps you hear your inner truth, how silence itself becomes a lesson for those who underestimated you. Most of all, we'll learn why silence is not escape, but control, not fear, but mastery, not running away, but taking your power back. So if you've ever felt misunderstood, abandoned, drained from explaining and proving yourself over and over again, this message is for you. Remember this. Every time you choose silence over an argument, you build confidence. Every time you walk away quietly, you protect your dignity. Every time you refuse to react and still keep your peace, you give yourself a power no one can take away. Silence is not the end. Silence is the beginning of new strength. So join me now as we explore the 10 truths of silence, the timeless Stoic superpower passed down through thousands of years. Truth number 1. Silence feeds your inner strength. Have you ever tried just sitting alone, in complete silence? No phone, no music, no small talk, just you, your breath, and your mind. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But in reality, it's one of the hardest things for the modern human to do. Because we live in a world so loud that silence feels rare. Silence feels uncomfortable. Silence even feels scary. But to the Stoics, silence was never emptiness. Silence was the training ground of the soul. In silence, you begin to notice yourself, the little thoughts you always ignored, the emotions you usually push away, and slowly, you learn to master your mind instead of letting your mind master you. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor of Rome, once wrote, "Go inward. The well of peace lies within." He didn't say find peace in others. He didn't say wait for the world to quiet down. He said, go back inside. So ask yourself, how many times have you searched for answers out there and ignored the voice in here? How many times have you listened to the noise of others instead of listening to yourself? Silence is the key. It's like shutting off all the static in a crowded room, until suddenly you can hear the steady beat of your own heart. And when you stop, when you go quiet, the mind begins to settle. And in that stillness, something powerful rises wisdom. New ideas appear. Problems that once felt tangled become clear. You begin to see the difference between fleeting emotions and lasting values. This isn't just philosophy, it's science. When we enter silence, the brain shifts into the default mode network. It's a state of rest, yet it's also the birthplace of creativity, of deeper connections. That's why so many breakthroughs, so many inventions were born in moments of silence. Picture this: one person is always arguing, reacting, explaining like a boat tossed in a storm. But the other, the one who chooses silence, becomes like a stone anchored deep in the sea, unshaken, steady, immovable. No matter how strong the waves above, true strength doesn't come from shouting louder than others. True strength comes from the stillness of a soul that cannot be shaken. Silence doesn't mean you're weak. Silence means you are training yourself to observe instead of react, to think instead of spiral in emotion. And in that training, you grow stronger. Not strong to control others, but strong enough to control yourself. So if the world feels too loud, if you're drowning in the noise of social media, the headlines, the judgments, step away. Shut it all off. Let yourself sink into silence. Because the Stoics knew this thousands of years ago, silence is not emptiness. Silence is the space where wisdom and strength are born. This is the first truth. Silence feeds your inner strength. When you turn inward, the outside world loses its grip on you. When you cultivate silence, you lay down the foundation of an unshakable life so that no storm, no chaos, no voice out there can ever sweep you away. Truth. 2. Silence helps you hear your inner truth. There's a habit most of us fall into. The moment we're hurt, we run outside of ourselves. You call a friend. You vent to family. You scroll through social media hoping to find a quote, a post, anything to patch the pain. And you believe someone somewhere will hand you the answer. But let me ask you this. How many times after all the talking, after all the advice, did that empty space inside still remain? The Stoics knew one thing clearly. The truth you're searching for, it's not out there. It's in here. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your judgment of it. And you have the power to revoke that judgment at any moment." What does that mean? It means the problem isn't the event. The problem is how you choose to see it. Change your perspective and you change your pain. So how do we uncover that truth? Through silence. When you go silent, the mind cools down. The storm of emotions, anger, disappointment, sadness slowly settles. And once the waters are still, you can finally see the bottom. You can finally see the truth. And sometimes that truth is hard to admit. I stayed too long in a relationship that wasn't healthy. I'm not really angry at them. I'm angry at myself for allowing it. I don't need closure. I need peace. These are the truths you'll never find in endless arguments or in the paragraphs you type out in desperation. They only arrive when you stop. And remember this: emotions scream, values whisper. Emotions push you to react, send the text, fight back, prove yourself. But values whisper softly. Hold your dignity. Protect your peace. Let go. Silence is what gives you the space to tell the difference. the difference between what's fleeting and what's lasting, between what you want in a moment of anger and what you truly need in a lifetime. Think about it. How many times have you reacted in rage only to regret it later? How many times have you said to yourself, if only I'd stayed quiet, if only I'd waited, things would be different? That's why the Stoics never rushed to react. They gave themselves a pause before the storm, a moment of stillness before the strike. Modern society tells you, speak your mind, say it now, don't hold back. But the truth is, you don't gain respect by shouting louder. You gain respect by staying silent at the right time. Silence isn't running away. Silence is stepping out of the noise so you can hear the most important voice of all your own. This is the second truth. Silence helps you hear your inner truth. No one else can give you the answer you need. Only you can. And you'll only hear it in silence. So next time you feel overwhelmed, next time you feel the urge to react, instantly stop. Step into stillness. Because in that stillness, you won't just find the truth. You'll find yourself. Truth 3. Silence is the language of wisdom. There's a paradox in life. The wiser a person is, the less they speak. And why is that? Because they know actions speak louder than words. Look through history. The great leaders, the philosophers, the ones who left a lasting mark. They didn't need noise. It was their calm observation, their steady patience before acting, that made people listen. When you choose silence, you give yourself space. Space to observe. Space to see beyond the heat of the moment. Space to understand the truth before you choose your words or your actions. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, once said, "If you wish to say anything, let your words be better than silence." Simple words. But think about it. How many times in your life have you spoken words you didn't need to say, words that hurt someone else? Words you regretted? And how many times have you thought, if only I had stayed silent? Silence is not emptiness. Silence is conscious choice. Silence is not a weakness. Silence is the wealth of wisdom. Silence is not cowardice. Silence is the courage to know when to speak and when to stop. Today's world pushes you to react fast. Speak up now. Don't hold back. Respond immediately, but ask yourself, does that quick reaction bring you closer to truth, or does it drag you further away? The wise choose silence because they know every word is a responsibility. Once spoken, you can never take it back. But in silence, you still hold the power of choice. Watch someone truly strong. They don't argue to prove they're right. They don't explain to protect their ego. Their calm presence is the proof. And you can apply this in your own life. At work, when colleagues lose their temper, you don't need to shout louder. Stay quiet. Watch. You'll see what the real issue is. At home, when conflict rises, sometimes silence heals faster than 1,000 explanations. In love, when you're misunderstood, silence doesn't mean surrender. It means you trust that truth will reveal itself over time, not through argument. This is the third truth. Silence is the language of wisdom. The wise don't need noise to be heard. The wise don't need fights to earn respect. The wise know when words add no value to silence. Silence is the wisest choice. So next time you feel the urge to react too quickly, remember Seneca's question. Will my words be better than silence? And if the answer is no, then silence is the truest wisdom. Truth, Pharma 4. Not explaining yourself is the highest form of confidence. Have you noticed? Every time we rush to explain ourselves, it usually comes from fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being judged, fear of not being good enough in someone else's eyes. But the Stoics were different. They never wasted energy proving their worth to people who had already decided not to understand them. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not waste the rest of your life speculating about others unless it brings some common good." What was he saying? That life is too short to burn your energy trying to control how others see you. So what is real confidence? It's not talking more to protect your image. It's not defending every action to avoid being misjudged. Real confidence is the calm that comes when you know your value even if no one else does. Think back. How many times have you written long explanations only to realize the other person didn't care? How many times have you argued until you were drained, only to discover they never wanted to understand you in the first place? That's when the truth hits. Every time you explain, you hand away your power. Every time you stay silent, you take it back. Now, yes, when you stop explaining, some people will call you cold. Some will label you selfish. But here's the truth that's not loss. That's alignment. You stop wasting energy on half-hearted relationships. You stop clinging to the need for approval. And what happens? The manipulators fade away. The real ones stay. And they respect you more for it. Silence doesn't mean you have nothing to say. Silence means you don't need to say it. Your presence, your actions, the way you live, that is the clearest explanation of all. This is the highest form of confidence. No defending, no justifying, no proving. You know who you are. You know what you're worth. And if someone can't see that, that's their problem, not yours. The Stoics understood losing people who never truly saw you was never a loss. It was freedom. And when you choose silence, you send a message louder than any words: I don't need your permission to be myself. So next time you're misunderstood, accused, or twisted into someone else's story, ask yourself, do I really need to explain? Or is silence the stronger answer? Because sometimes silence isn't surrender. Silence is the boldest declaration of confidence you'll ever make. Truth. 5. Silence makes people feel your absence. Have you noticed something strange? The more you talk, the less people listen. The more you explain, the less your words matter. The more you try to prove yourself, the smaller you appear in their eyes. But when you go silent, when you stop defending, stop sending those long messages, stop making those desperate calls, something flips. They start to pay attention. Silence doesn't push. Silence pulls. Silence doesn't beg. Silence makes them think. Silence isn't emptiness. Silence is the space where they finally feel your absence. Elbert Hubbard once said, "He who does not understand your silence will probably not understand your words." The Stoics knew this truth thousands of years ago. Think back to the last time someone ghosted you, disrespected you, treated you with cold indifference. What was your first reaction? Send another text. Write a long explanation. Try harder to prove your worth. And what happened? The more you talked, the less they cared. The more you explained, the further they pulled away. The more you chased, the faster they ran. But when you go silent, when you withdraw instead of fight, that's when the power shifts. Because silence is a mirror. It doesn't scream, but it reflects everything. It forces the other person to face their own actions. It whispers loud and clear, "I saw what you did. I know how you treated me, and I will not lower myself to explain it to you." Silence, clarity. Silence, self-respect. Silence, discipline, not wasting energy on those who've already chosen not to understand you. And this is the moment power returns to you. When you stop chasing approval, you start healing. When you stop wasting time in arguments, you regain your peace. When you stop explaining, you finally find yourself again. Yes, silence is not just a wall that protects you. Silence is medicine. It breaks the cycle of endless justifications. It gives you the strength to rise and move on. And most of all, it allows you to reclaim the power you once gave away. This is the fifth truth. Silence makes people feel your absence, because absence can echo louder than presence, because silence can cut deeper than 1,000 words. So the next time you feel the urge to explain, to argue, to send that one last message, remember this: silence is the strongest voice you'll ever have. Truth number 6. Silence exposes what words try to hide. Have you ever noticed? Words can hide a lot. Someone can speak sweetly, yet treat you cruelly. They can apologize, promise, justify, yet never truly change. Yes, words can deceive. But one thing never lies: silence. Ralph Waldo Emerson once wrote, "What you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say." And he was right. Actions are the truth. Words are just smoke. When you go silent, you step out of the game of words. You stop getting trapped in empty promises. You stop being swayed by smooth excuses. Instead, you watch. And in that watching, the truth of who people really are begins to show. You'll see it clearly. The one who respects you, they'll reach out even in your silence. The one who only used you, they'll disappear because they never valued you. The one who tried to control you, they'll grow angry, confused, because they lost their power to manipulate you with words. That's right. Silence isn't coldness. Silence is observation. It gives you time. Time to see clearer. Time to separate what's genuine from what's fake. Remember this: you don't have to confront people to know who they are. Just go silent. You don't need grand speeches of loyalty. Just go silent and watch what they do when your attention is gone. Because truth always shows itself in the quiet. The one who truly loves you, they'll step closer. The fake one, they'll let the distance grow. The manipulator, they'll panic because their greatest weapon is gone, their words. And believe me, your absence can be stronger than any confrontation, because they can dismiss your words, but they cannot dismiss your silence. They can argue with your opinion, but they cannot argue with your withdrawal. Silence is not defeat. Silence is the victory of clarity. It's how you stand firm without debate, without noise, and still let the truth reveal itself. This is the sixth truth. Silence exposes what words try to hide, because truth doesn't need to defend itself. Truth only needs to be observed. So next time you hear a promise, an excuse, or sweet words, don't rush to believe. Wait. Watch. Let silence do the work. Because in silence, you'll finally see the difference between what is said and what is real. Truth number 7. Silence is the weapon against provocation. In life, you will always meet people like this. They try to push your buttons. They try to tear you down in front of others. They throw sharp words just to see you lose control. And if you react in anger, if you explode, if you let your emotions take over, what happens? You've fallen right into their trap. You've handed over your power. you've given them full control of your emotions. The Stoics called this a silent defeat. Not a defeat from the outside, a defeat born from your lack of control on the inside. But there is a weapon that makes every provocation powerless. It isn't loud, it isn't sharp, it isn't explosive. It's simple, but it's terrifying. Silence. When you go silent, you stay in control. When you go silent, you refuse to be led by someone else's strings. When you go silent, you turn their attack into nothing. Picture this. Someone insults you in front of a crowd. Everyone waits for you to explode, to fight back, to defend yourself. But instead, you smile and stay silent. In that moment, they lose all their power. The Stoics called this the art of defense, not falling into traps, not wasting energy on cheap provocations, letting your silence do the work until the attacker runs out of fuel. Now, you may ask, but isn't silence weakness? Isn't that cowardice? No. Cowardice is fear. Silence is conscious choice. You choose not to react because you know your worth isn't decided in a shouting match. You choose silence because your peace is worth more than winning a petty argument. Seneca once said, "No one can harm you without your consent." And silence is exactly that, refusing to give consent. Think about it. How many times have you argued until exhaustion, only to realize you gained nothing but stress? How many times have you reacted instantly and later regretted giving someone else the power to control your mood? Silence doesn't mean you lost. Silence means you refuse to play their game. And when you refuse, the game ends. This is the seventh truth. Silence is the weapon against provocation. It doesn't just protect you from pointless pain, it proves your strength, the strength of self-mastery. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember this. You don't have to react. You don't have to step down into their game. Let your silence be your shield, and you'll see nothing frustrates them more than realizing they can't touch you. Truth number 8. Begging for closure is self-betrayal. Be honest with yourself. Have you ever longed for that final explanation, that one last conversation, that perfect apology to finally set you free? That's what we call closure. But here's the brutal truth. The more you crave closure, the deeper you trap yourself in pain. Because if someone truly cared, if they had even an ounce of respect for you, they would have given you closure already, without you having to beg for it. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." And that's exactly the point here. You don't need closure from someone else. You need to live your values and let your silence be the final word. Look at the cycle of those who keep chasing closure. They hurt you. You demand an explanation. They ignore you, or worse, respond with coldness. You feel even more broken. And the cycle repeats. Until you realize this. Every time you beg for closure, you hand them control of your healing. You tell yourself, if they just say one thing, I'll finally feel peace. But if you think deeply, you'll see the truth. You don't need them for peace. Peace only comes when you decide to stop. Real closure is not the last text, not the marathon conversation, not the apology you've been waiting for. Real closure is when you silently accept and walk away. That's it. No need for them to admit fault. No need for them to explain why. No need for them to wrap it up neatly for you. Because closure is not something they give. Closure is something you give yourself. And the moment you choose silence, you break the cycle of chasing validation. You stop wounding yourself with false hope. You reclaim the self-respect you lost by clinging to explanations that never came. This is the eighth truth. Begging for closure is betraying yourself, because every time you ask for it, you're really saying, "My wound, my healing, my peace depends on you." But that's a lie. It doesn't depend on them. It depends on you. So next time you crave that final talk, that last explanation, that perfect ending, remember this. You don't need them to close the chapter. You can end it yourself anytime through silence. And in that silence, you'll discover something far more powerful than closure. You'll discover freedom. Truth number 9. Silence and separation teaches the deepest lesson. Do you know? There's a power greater than striking back, a power that doesn't come from shouting, doesn't come from arguing, doesn't come from having the last word. It comes from this: you walk away in silence. No anger, no drama, no endless messages left behind. Just silence. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And when you choose silence and walk away, you force others to face not your words, but the emptiness you leave behind. Do you know what frightens them most? Not your accusations, not your tears, but your absence. They want you to react. They want you to fight back. They want you to return even in anger just to prove they still have control over you. But when you stay silent, when you don't return, that's when their illusion collapses. Silence becomes the mirror. It forces them to face guilt, to face loss, to face their own actions. And that silence, more than any words, becomes the deepest lesson. But here's the truth. The real lesson isn't for them. It's for you. Because when you walk away in silence, you learn peace doesn't need permission. You don't need anyone's approval to be happy. Not everyone deserves an explanation. Truth doesn't need to be proven to those who refuse to see it. Silence is healing. Silence is release. Every step you take in silence is a step back toward your own freedom. Silence isn't running away. Silence is a brave choice. It's choosing not to stay trapped in endless arguments. It's choosing not to carry the weight of those who never valued you. This is the 9th truth. Silence and separation teaches the deepest lesson. Not with anger, but with absence. Not with words, but with space. Not to change them, but to free yourself. So the next time you feel the urge to send one last message, make one last call, say one last goodbye, remember this. You don't need it. Walk away. Stay silent. And let that silence be the final proof of your strength, your dignity, and your freedom. Truth. 10. Silence is the final and strongest word. There's one thing you need to remember in every argument, every relationship, every storm. Silence is always the last word and the strongest one, because every excuse will be forgotten, every fight will fade, but silence stays. Silence is the period at the end of the sentence. It doesn't need to explain. It doesn't need decoration. It doesn't need defense. It just exists, and that existence says it all. The Stoics knew this true value isn't in winning a debate. It's in not losing yourself. And sometimes the way you keep yourself intact is through silence. Remember this. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to prove to be accepted. You don't need to explain to be respected. Every time you choose silence, you're building confidence. Every time you choose silence, you're holding your dignity. Every time you choose silence, you're giving yourself a power no one can take away. Others may think you're cold, but in truth, you're at peace. They may think you lost, but in truth you just conquered yourself. They may wait for your reaction, but when you stay silent, it's them who are left in the emptiness. Silence isn't a bitter ending. It's the beginning of freedom, the beginning of self-respect. This is the 10th truth. Silence is the final word and the strongest one, not because you're arrogant, not because you're dismissive, but because you know this self-respect is worth more than any explanation. So let your silence be your declaration. Let your silence be the wall that protects your dignity. Let your silence be the undeniable proof of an inner strength no one can break. So when everything has been said, when every argument has lost its meaning, when every explanation just drains your soul, remember this silence is the last word. And sometimes silence isn't just the ending. It's the loudest response, the deepest response, the most lasting response. And in the end, what Stoic philosophy teaches us is not to be cold, not to freeze our hearts, not to turn our backs on love. Stoicism is clarity. Stoicism is the ability to step outside the chaos and still remain fully human. Stoicism is the strength to know what deserves your energy and what you should leave behind in silence. Silence, simple as it sounds, is control. It is peace. It is the quiet but powerful refusal to pour your soul into what isn't worthy of it. Every time you choose silence over arguing, you're building confidence. Every time you choose silence over begging, you're protecting your dignity. Every time you choose silence over chasing approval, you're feeding your inner worth, the one thing no one can ever take away. Silence doesn't mean you're weak. Silence doesn't mean you gave up. Silence means you found strength within yourself, and you don't need to prove it to anyone. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." And that's the message I want to leave you with today. Don't search for peace in the outside world, a world built on noise and instability. Find it within yourself. Find it in the silence you choose. So let silence be your final word, not out of ego, not out of pride, but out of the deepest self-respect. This isn't just a choice. It's a declaration of life. I don't need to shout to be heard. I don't need to beg to be seen. I don't need to prove myself to be respected. My silence has already said it all. And carry this with you as your final affirmation, a reminder every time you feel the urge to react, to explain, to fight. My silence is my final word and my greatest strength.